Hey guys, what's up? I'm Nikhil, your TubePad instructor, and in this After Effects tutorial, I'm going to show you guys how to create a really cool looking 3D animation using a plugin called Plexus. Now Plexus is a paid plugin, but you can also use the free trial version if you download it from the official website. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the video and get started. So here we are in After Effects, so let's start by creating a new composition and let's rename this to main cause this is gonna be our main composition. 1920 into 1080, 60 fps and 10 seconds should be good enough and hit OK. And right off the bat, I'm going to create a new solid. So hit Ctrl Y to create a new solid and name this to Plexus. You can of course name it to anything that you want. And color doesn't really matter in this because we will be using the Plexus effect. And let's go into the effects and preset panel and type in Plexus. There we go, and just drag it onto the solid layer. There we have it. So now we get two control panels, that is the effects and control panel, and the second is the Plexus object panel. This is a very interesting plugin. You can play around with this and create some really cool and dynamic looking animation, and that too in 3D space. So the first thing that we need to do is add a geometry. So I can go into the add geometry and add a primitive. There we have it, and let's set this to sphere. And if I create a new camera pretty quick, let's set this to 28 millimeters, looks good. You can see this is a 3D object and you can create some really cool stuff. So, you can increase the sphere radius to create some really nice animations. You can also play around with the sphere slices to create even more particles into the scene. You can see, looks really, really cool. So it's a really fun effect and you can create some really nice animations. So for now, I'm just gonna hit Ctrl Z, to come back to 0, just like that. And let's go and add an effector, maybe a noise effector, and let's go and add a transform effector as well. So let's go into the Plexus transform, and I can uniform scale it, so I can just uncheck this to so we have control over every different scale. So I can increase the X scale, the Y scale, and the Z as well. So for this effect we just need the Z scale, so I'm going to set this to around 700, just like that. So you can see we have this really cool looking kind of a tube into the 3D space. So for now, I'm just going to go into the camera and reset the position of the camera. Also create a new null object. And this is going to be our camera controller. So let's rename this to cam control. Also make sure to make it 3D. So let's toggle switch and make it 3D. And pan the camera to the camera control. So now we can, hit P and animate the position of the camera just like that. So let's go into the Plexus and let's go into the noise effector. So now you can create some really dynamic looking particles, just like tweaking the noise just like this. Also, I'm going to go into the effector, or let's go into the renderer and add a line renderer. So now we have some really nice looking lines, as you can see. Let's set this to around 5. That should be good enough, and you can play around with the maximum distance to create some really cool animations. So what I'm going to do is let's set this to 0 at the very beginning of our timeline. Let's create a keyframe. Let's go to around 8 seconds maybe, or let's go to 9 seconds. And let's set this to around somewhere around there, maybe 150, something like that. Looks good to me. I think I'll go with 120. That looks much better. Okay, this is looking pretty good. You can also play around with the noise, so maybe I'll just set this to around, let's go 300 or something like that. Really high number. Pretty cool. So let's animate the camera pretty quick. Let's hit P to bring down the position properties. Create a keyframe at the very beginning. Let's go to 9 seconds and let's animate the position just like so. So now we have a really nice and minimal zooming animation of our camera. I think it's a bit too slow. I'll increase this a bit more to around maybe 300. Let's see. Yep, this is looking much better. Really, really cool. You can also change the color of the Plexus by going into the Plexus primitive object, and let's set this to a really nice light blue color. Something like this looks pretty good to me. See, this is looking very cool. I can also turn on the depth of field for the camera, so I can hit AA 2 times and turn on the depth of field and increase the aperture to around 150 or something. Or maybe I'll just set this to really low, maybe something like 15 actually, and increase the blur level to 200. But as you can see, our camera aperture is not affecting the plexus because we need to assign the camera to the plexus. So to do that, we just need to go into the plexus options and let's go and turn on right over here where it says required for depth of field. Turn this on and there we have it. Now our camera depth of field is affecting the plexus as well. So let's go into depth of field and increase the, play around with the aperture and stuff to create some really nice look. Also, I'm going to go right over here where it says render motion blur. I'm going to set this to comp setting, I think. And for the depth of field, I'm going to set this to camera settings. Then I can also make this render quality high just to get a really nice and smooth depth of field, of course. Let's go into camera again and set the aperture really low. Something like there at 3 and just play around with the blur level, setting it somewhere around there. Then I can go ahead and add an effect called shine and just drag it onto the plexus just like that. Now it's really hard to see, so I can just boost up the light a little bit. You can see right over here we have this really nice lights shining it up. Let's go into colorize and change the color pretty quick. Maybe make it a really nice blue color. Same for this one. I can see it more properly. And also let's add some glow to this thing. So let's add a glow. There we have it, looking really nice. Increase the radius a bit just to create a nice fall off. And increase the threshold a bit more. Something like that. Looks pretty interesting, as you can see. Looking very cool. Also, I'm going to add a pretty quick adjustment of curves. So let's add curves to this. Let's bring this really nice, something like that. Let's create a new adjustment layer, and really quickly I'm going to add a vignette. So let's rename this to V for vignette, and let's add a curves adjustment onto the vignette and bring this really low to make it look really dark. And let's select the ellipse tool, double click right over here. So it's going to create a shape just like so. You can tweak it a little bit if I want to. And let's invert this up just like that. Hit F and feather the amount really high. Just something like 500 looks good. And also I'm going to add a pretty quick background for this. So hit Ctrl Y to create a new solid. Rename this to BG for background. Doesn't really matter which color it is because I'm going to add a gradient ramp to this. Bring this below. Swap the colors, and for this I'm going to go with a really nice kind of a darker blue color and increase the ramp scatter so we don't get any color bendings, just like so. See, this is looking pretty nice. Maybe I'll increase the depth of field a bit more. I can increase the blur level just to make it really nice, and maybe I'll increase the intensity a bit. Just like that, looking really nice. Also, let's create a new adjustment layer and let's rename this to CC for color correction, and we can do some basic color correction, just like adding a curves adjustment to this and playing around with the highlights and stuff like that. Really nice. Then what I can do is I'm going to duplicate the plexus effect, or the plexus layer, I'll say. Hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. Let's select the bottom one, and I'm going to delete the curves. And also I'm going to turn on the glow and the shine just for now. And I'm going to delete the lines renderer because I just want the points renderer. And then I can change the noise effector. I can just change the position of the noise to create a more dynamic scene, just like so. So now we have something like this. As you can see, maybe bring down the size of the points a little low to maybe around 1.5 or something like that. Yep, that looks much better. Let's see if I add some glow. Yeah, I'll keep the glow for now, and I'm not sure I'm gonna go with shine, so I'm gonna delete the shine. And there we have it, looking really nice. So let's go ahead and add some text into our scene. So let's select the text tool, and you can of course type in absolute anything that you want. I'm gonna type in, let's say something like the connection. And also make the text 3D so it interacts with our camera. Maybe I'll just push this behind in Z space a little bit. Just like that. So as you can see, now it's gonna animate with our camera. Looking pretty cool. Let's animate the opacity of the text. So I'm gonna go right over here at 4 seconds. Hit T to bring down the opacity. Create a keyframe, go back in time to let's say 2 seconds, and let's set this to 0. So now we have something like this. Pretty cool. Let's select this, hit F9 to ease it, and then I can create a new solid and add optical flares to this. So let's rename this to OP for optical flares and add optical flares. Just like so. And for the blending mode, I'm gonna go with screen. Let's go into option and clear all, and we just need the glow and we need the streak, just like that. Maybe I'll bring down the glow a bit more, just like so. Hit OK. There we have it. Let's bring down the scale of the complete optical flare, just like that. And also I'm gonna change the color to something like a blue color. And then we can set this to 3D so it interacts with our camera, and place it right over here where our text is. And maybe I'll set this to 40 to make it a bit smaller. And this is looking pretty good actually. Select the optical flares and place it in the position that we want. Just somewhere around there. Just trying to be as precise as possible. Yeah, that looks much better as you can see. Also, I'm going to duplicate this by hitting Ctrl D on the keyboard. Go to options, and we don't need a streak this time. Close this up and increase the glow just like that. Hit OK. Select the optical flares, and I'm going to place it just right over here. And let's change the color to something like a really nice purplish color, just to add a bit more color variation into the scene and make it look really nice. And duplicate this by hitting Ctrl D. Oh, I want to duplicate this layer by hitting Ctrl D and select the optical flares, and I'm gonna place this right over here. You can also change the color if I want to. You know, I can make it something like a really nice orange color, maybe something like that, and increase the scale. For this one, I'm going to increase the scale as well. And there we have it. This is looking really interesting as you can see. And just to add a bit more realism into the scene, I can create a new adjustment layer. And let's add some noise to this. There we go, maybe around 2%, really minimal. And this will also help us to get rid of the color bendings as well. Let's rename it to noise. And there we have it. So let's pretty quickly preview our complete animation. And one more thing that I need to do is animate this optical flare. So let's select this one. And I'm going to animate this with our text. So I'm going to place somewhere around there. Let's hit T to bring down the opacity. Create a keyframe. Go back in time to somewhere around here. And set this to 0. So now we have really simple animation for our optical flare. Select the keyframes, hit F9 to ease it. You bring this a bit more right over here. So now we have something like this. One more thing that I can do is add some flicker to this. So I can just turn on the flicker to smooth and increase the speed to around 20. And for the amount, I'll go with 20 as well, just to add some flicker animation so it looks more realistic. And there we have it, a really cool looking 3D animation scene. Also, I can create a new adjustment layer pretty quick. and add some CC to this, or maybe I have already created it, so I'm just gonna move it on the top, you know, and just make it a bit, tweak it a little bit, just to make it look very nice. See, this is looking pretty cool. So that is a wrap for today. I hope this video was helpful to you guys, and I will see you guys in my next video. Till then, take care and thank you so much for watching, guys.